And I also think that the froth and the chaos of what's coming is going to allow a lot of this stuff to come out in a meaningful way, just because the universe wants it to. But universe decides that our wishes are not worth anything. We're just going to end up having to go with how it actually comes out. Again, though, we can make decisions, such as, no, I don't think I want you jabbing me with that little thing.
That's
right.
One decision very much on the physical level, but there's also a lot of science, especially recent in the last few years, of absolute proof that your thoughts can change your DNA, etc. So that means there is total control over the body. So it is not, we don't have to sit back and say it's whatever's coming at me, I have to fight on a flight level, say, get away from this needle.
Exactly. You don't have to have the bug-out bag and take off just because that occurs. And in fact, that concept even comes back to the discussion about Kalaman and the shift into the galactic, and from galactic into universal, because it is at the point that you shift from a galactic viewpoint. And some of us sit around here and worry about what the galaxy is doing to the planet Earth and in our solar system. So legitimately, many of the people on the planet are operating at a galactic level already, and they're out looking at the galaxy at large, etc. But when you shift to the universal, you actually shift into that stage of understanding how consciousness works. And if we are being told accurate information from some of the stuff coming out about Roswell, etc., then a big component of the contact meme has to do with this hidden level of power that is available within consciousness. And then, in fact, a spaceship is surprisingly non-mechanistic. It's not like Star Trek with dilithium crystals and all of that, because basically you use your consciousness to just say, well, let's be over there now, and you're just on the other side of the galaxy, and you just don't bother with any of the stuff in between. So that, I think, is in the froth between the galactic and the universal, is that level of understanding, and I think that level of stuff has the powers that be just excreting the small sharp ones and running around in circles.
Right, because that would suggest, of course, there's advanced beings out there that are all way beyond the humans on this planet that can do what you said, just with an intent, change a reality for somebody. So.
Right, and imagine a situation where even a small percentage of our say that right now, if we have 6.5 billion people, then I grant you that I'm aware of maybe 40 or 50 individuals with that level of key power or chi power, however you want to think about it, right? Where they can manifest stuff. Or they can do extraordinary non-materialistic stuff, like taking a chopstick and pushing it through a brick without damaging either the brick or the chopstick. And basically they just tell the brick to make a hole so that they can put the chopstick through, and they go, psh, and there it goes. That kind of thing. If that were the case, that we had such a small level of individuals, and say I'm off by a factor of even 1,000, so we have 3,000 or 4,000 of these guys running around, I think the powers that be think that that's a manageable portion, and that we'll all write them off as nut jobs. But when it starts scaling up into even, say, 1/10 or 1/20th of a percent of the planetary populace, which would be 1 to 6 million people that had that kind of ability, that's got to get them really scared. And anything that gets to the point of the populace saying, no, I'm not going to go along with you, you silly bastards, that's a screwy idea and it's better to go and do this, that also gets them scared. Because bear in mind, from the viewpoint of, say, the Queen of England, she theoretically claims ownership to 1/6 of the landmass of the planet and everything that's on that landmass, including all the humans. And as an aside, I was talking to a fellow in Canada recently and telling him about some of this stuff. He'd asked me some questions. Then he responded, oh, well, that can't happen because that's Crown property. And I said, yes. And he said, well, the Crown is the government, and that's owned by all of us. And I say, no. Basically, the Crown is the Crown, and y'all are subjects. And a subject, the definition of that is, you work and I eat. So we got to get our terminology straight here. But fundamentally, we're coming down to that period, I think, where it'll all pop out and start becoming very visible to a great many. They appear to have no reason to pop it off at this time other than whatever it is that's propelling them through fear. And that fear language is just out and about everywhere.
Well, I've had thoughts, Cliff, of all of this is going on as part of the smoke and mirrors. They're they're creating something not because that's the way they're headed or what they want, but it's to distract from what really
sure,
is
tricky.
the other thing.
Yeah, it's the whole watch this hand, don't watch this other hand, watch this hand over here, Yeah. And they are very tricky, and there's layers upon layers upon layers as all the guys observe. The lie is different at all the various different levels. However, there's a real interesting thing about that. Say that the powers that be are using that approach of compartmentalizing and lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. Well, in order to get away from that, as a counter to that, what one needs to do is to eliminate their dependence upon minutia or detail. Take in enough detail to satisfy yourself that a particular subject is indeed quasi-valid at whatever headline level, and then step back and keep stepping back and keep stepping back. And then you see all the lies for what they are as a giant pile of them, and you can actually start making some decisions based on the mere fact that there's a huge amount of lies in this particular area. It doesn't matter what the lies are, just that there's a huge amount in the area of swine flu should get the hackles up saying, something isn't right. That makes sense?
That very much so. Now, with that, we need to take another break. You're listening to Clif from halfpasthuman.com on Beyond the Ordinary. We'll be back right after this.
Okay, continuing. Let's go, Cliff.
Well, it's getting back to that boundary layer of Kalaman and Ian Lungold as we cross from galactic into universal. That, I think, is the point at which the powers that be were maybe in the early to mid-50s. They crossed a boundary layer where they understood things like anti-gravity and basically what we call zero-point modules or free energy. And it's, been rather stingy of them not to share with the rest of us. And who knows what they've been doing in the meantime, because they've had this stuff for 60 years. But we appear to be at that level of crises as a species within a planet that we're about to make that crossing from the galactic into the universal, which requires that we suddenly start thinking about things in entirely different ways. And I don't mean relative to the hyped-up idea of global warming. I think of it as sudden catastrophic climate change. We don't have any real clue yet which way it's going to end up. But it does seem as though from our data and from recent developments that the various different compartmentalized layers that are holding back some of this stuff, the cool stuff that's been in development for 60 years, are starting to break down. And whether they'll break down enough or whether they'll come out in the form of a planetary push for dominance by the powers that be, which we could actually imagine. And even people like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne kind of postulated such, that you could get a cabal together that could develop all this stuff in secrecy and come up with these fantastic new weapons or, giant floating triangles, right? They can just hover over you indefinitely, and they can, even if they ran out of bullets, they could throw stuff on you, and you couldn't do anything about it. And they could theoretically come on out at this time and attempt to take over the planet, so to speak. However, our particular viewpoint, based on our data and the things we're showing, is that the stresses around us, especially relative to the climate change, which has just been rather bizarre for us. Where I'm at now, we're into the first winter storm, which came along a couple of days ago. And
after a drought, yeah.
Yeah, after our drought, and not only our drought, but we had record-setting temperatures that were frying plants here.
Yes.
It got up to 110 on my back deck. That's just not something that occurs in the Northwest. And yet we've got people with all kinds of crops rotting in the East Coast and so on. So the evidence is starting to show up in a visible fashion, and we're also going to get to a giant food crisis here. All of this is coming to head at the same time as the dollar dying and the powers that be are making their strange moves with the swine flu et al. And we have to acknowledge one thing there, that there is some, if you are granted certain assumptions, the idea that you could eliminate the Great Depression by killing a lot of people off sort of makes sense from their viewpoint, because it's instant demand destruction in what they may think of as a closed environment. And so in that sense, that's sort of another reason that they may try this kind of thing, in spite of the fact that they really do need a larger populace than they think. In any event, though, that's the beginning of all of this is probably days away. Our first initial blip on the radar for greater visibility on the economic stuff starts on August 16th. and it's sort of a little bubble that goes up to about the 22nd. We should